All right, peace, family. We are now live. Peace to everybody in the chat. What's going on, family? What is going on? Brother Rich is now live. We about to have a great show tonight. Real great show tonight. Uh, got a living legend with me on the line today, as y'all can see. About to bring the brother on. Before I do as usual, I want to get to a quick commercial. Y'all see, we got the I could do magic shirts available now. The hoodies available now. Let's get to this quick commercial, y'all. I'm excited.
Magic, I can do magic. 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 I can do magic.
Y'all make sure you head over to holyghost3.com. Pre-order that. I'm real excited. It's fire, y'all. I'm real. Shout out to Jefferson from Athletics who made the design. You know what I'm saying? Real excited about it. Make sure y'all go over to the website and get y'all some magical merch. But with that being said, family, I want to welcome back once again. This brother's real sharp with what he does. My brother Akhu. Welcome back.
Peace, Lord.
Hey, good to have you back on here. We got some good stuff to talk about. Let me see. Yeah, shout out to everybody in the chat. Yeah, we got interesting conversation tonight. You know, dealing with the subject matter of astro-theology in the Bible, Raku. I know you went into it briefly previous time when you were on here, but I always find it fascinating how the stories in the Bible relate to these cosmological events. Helps me understand and helps me appreciate and respect the book more. You know, a lot of us put the book down and we didn't pick it back up. We figured that, the book wasn't for us no more. Little do we know the book is still for us. We were just reading it and interpreting it the wrong way. So a brother like you come along and does his thing in the field of astrology, and you make these predictions based on astrology, and you do these readings, and you're able to read the stars. You know what I'm saying? And it's fascinating to a lot of us, Raku. So with that being said, brother, in terms of astrotheology, I know a lot of people are familiar with Santos Bonacci. Shout out to him. A lot of people are familiar with him and the stories in the Bible and how they relate, to the cosmos. I would love to hear how you break this down, my brother. So when you hear the term astrotheology and you see what's being said out there, I would love to hear what you got to add on. What's your thoughts starting out on the whole concept, and how do you go into your brand of astrotheology in the Bible, Raku?
Okay. Before we get deeper, I want
Yeah.
everybody to know astrotheology isn't limited to the Bible.
Okay.
It's in every religion that has survived to date. Right? They use the symbolism of the cosmos because that which is divine is considered to have come from above in this era of time. You have to understand the evolution of religion and man himself, civilization itself, because as man evolved, civilization evolved, and so did his religion. Okay. In the beginning, man worshipped the earth. And as time went on, hundreds, thousands of years, man started worshiping the phenomena that they saw on the earth. Okay? For hundreds or thousands of years, man evolves and they start work. They realize that the storms, the weather, and all the shifting of the earth that they had been worshiping previously concurred with certain motions in the sky. With this realization came the notion that the divine was above us. Because noticing that, every time this star or the moon is near this star and this moving star is there, we get bad winters. When the moon is in this sign, our husbands don't come back from hunting, you see. So after thousands of years of compiling all of that, they come to a conclusion that what went on above was the cause, however erroneous or right and exact it was. They concluded that what went on above governed what went on down here. When the sun rose, everything in nature woke up. When the sun went down, everything in nature got quiet, right? And all of the beasts of the night came out. So they saw this cyclic motion happening. And in that cyclic constant, the fact that it was constant, it was perceived to be infinite. You know, all your life. As far as we know, the sun rises and sets every day since you first noticed, every day while you notice, and even when you're not paying attention, this happens. So they began to realize that things that are constant and permanent have a stronger stance in nature than those things that are transient, right? So eventually, man looks in the sky and starts worshiping what he sees up there. We have evolved past that to a point where now we're worshiping space. And what I mean by that is, when you think of space, right, all the attributes that you can give your creator from whatever religion you come can be ascribed and attributed to space itself, not a specific degree of space, but space entirely, okay? When you think in those terms, you see that our religious ideas come from our environment, okay? So the astro-theological aspect of it comes into play long before any booked religion is concerned. And we know this because we find the astro symbolism in every scripture of the religions. All right. But let's take the Bible for our examination. All right. Now, you're not going to get the astro-theological understanding entirely from reading the Bible, merely reading it and contemplating it, because you have to have knowledge of, you have the celestial scientific knowledge to see that it is even being encoded in the book. All right. When we read the Bible, we know that in the beginning it was written in Hebrew, the book of Genesis. All right. That its original was in Hebrew. That what we see today in English is not an altogether accurate translation of what is there. For if it was, the astro-theology encapsulated in the scripture would be much easier to identify. Okay? So if you're going to embark on a research study of astro-theology, you need to get your astronomical information aptitude up. You need to understand the mechanics of the moon as it revolves around the earth, and the earth as it revolves around the sun. Regardless of what doctrine you subscribe to, flat earth or whatever, the calendar ain't gonna change. All right. So if you understand that, the time that it takes for the sun to reappear in one state to another is a year. All right. And you have to understand that civilization began with the keeping of time. Because as man was living in the jungle, in the trees, amongst the animals, whether he had shelter or not, right? That knowing the cycle of time allowed him to plan ahead, it gave him survival skills. Knowing when it was going to be winter meant life or death to ancient man. So as we evolve from a wandering, pastoral, gathering, hunting society to an agricultural society, we were able to devote more time and energy to the observation of the heavens. In time, people were appointed to do this because the very life essence, survival essence of man depended upon knowing the seasons. Naturally, we would cultivate the information and turn it into lessons and turn it into a discipline. As man started keeping time and keeping track of time and appointing specific people to keep track of time, eventually this became a caste, of these group of men are the men who keep the time for us, who keep the festivals, who keep the seasons, right? So that we can know how to function here on this plane of events. Just imagine, we take for granted, modern man takes for granted the fact that we can just turn on our computer and look to see what day of the month it is. Ancient man didn't have that convenience. He had to build all kinds of contrivances, devices, set up monuments and buildings or erect structures to assist him in the keeping of time. And there's a discipline to it because the earth has several motions. It wobbles, it spins, and it moves around the sun, and it rolls as axial. As axis rolls in a very slow, imperceptible, almost imperceptible pace. So over time, man began to discover these things. Now we deified them. And why would we deify them? The deity, gods and goddesses and demons and angels and these things, because we were giving a form to subjective ideas that were mathematical concepts and constructs used to keep time. And these times became sacred. The times that they kept. In other words, when the spring began, when summer began, when the winter began, these changes of the seasons, in order to keep it fresh in the minds of the people without divulging to them the esoteric meaning of these motions outside of the managing of life for the seasons and surviving the climate on Earth. Lost myself. They would set festivals in place for the people to remember. In the event that some catastrophe kept the dispersed or discombobulated their society, right? Any survivors would have a knowledge of the holidays. Soon, the timekeepers, their caste grew into a priesthood. And they enjoyed that class. And when you look through every civilization, the priesthood had a very high position in society. They were able to dazzle people with their predictions. In so many days, the moon is going to eclipse the sun. And to the common man who had no knowledge whatsoever of the celestial mechanics, this was miraculous. So the priests got power in every society that they existed in, and they were responsible for keeping the time. So they invented a language within which to cloak this knowledge and disperse it amongst the people without the common man coming to an understanding of these secrets that gave them their status. So if you understand that, the language that they devised to cloak the astronomy in was the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
You see, time is forever. Right. We mark a beginning and an end to a period, and we call this a time. But time itself is a continuum that has no beginning that we can identify, nor any end that we can relate to. So time itself is absolute, and it is God. So the priest caste, keeping time, they became the oracles of God, the vicars. That's the word I was looking for. The representative, the blood and flesh representative of whatever God they were advocating or whatever feature of nature that they were putting forth as a deity. In time, they began to scripturize their religion, okay? Because it gave them control, maneuverability, and it also put uniformity to the society. All right. Some of these secrets were shared with royalty, but most of it was kept with the priesthood. So consequently, all right. Um, so they began to encode it into scripture because it wasn't enough for one shaman to service the multitudes as people began to settle and live in townships and cities and this. So the volume had to be expanded. So that in order to do that, they had to preserve the information and the knowledge in tomes and still keep it a secret so that they can set themselves apart from the common man. Consequently, what we end up with are the many religions that man has engaged. When we see these old tribal spiritualists, they call them religions, these people preserve a tradition of identifying the energetic workings in nature and the objects in nature. Okay. And they deified this because the way of water doesn't change. Water is as wet today as it was a million years ago. So it can be said that the wetness of water is immortal, and that which is immortal is beyond the purview of man and thus divine. Okay. This is why all of these orbits, aspects, positions of the planets themselves, different aspects of the science that are applied were deified because these things go on and on and on and on and on forever and ever and ever. Amen. Right?
Indeed.
This is the foundations of astro-theology. Now, when we go to the Bible, we look at the very first verse of the Bible in Hebrew. All right. And it says, Bereshith, Bara Elohim et Hashemayim wa'aretz. Okay, the first word, Bereshith. If you lexicon research this word, if you understand Hebrew, you know that this word doesn't mean beginning. Bereshith is an extension of the word bara. Bara means to evolve. So Bereshith is one context of evolution, and bara is the active concept of evolving a thing. So what it really says is, out of the evolution evolved the gods, the planets, and the earth. Literally, that is a literal translation. Bereshith, the great evolution. Bara, evolved. Elohim, the gods. Eth Hashemayim, which is translated in the Bible as heavens, but it really points to the disposers, the moving stars, okay, and the earth, which makes more sense. And how do we know that it was talking about our solar system, the sun and the planets in our solar system? Because when we go to the 19th Psalm, it says that Eth Hashemayim, the heavens, so they say, really the planets, declare the glory of God. And it gives other descriptions of what they do. When we get to the verse referencing the sun, it says that he has set the sun in them as a tabernacle. So if you understand what a tabernacle is, it's a shrine that the congregation surrounds. That even back then, man knew that the sun was in the center of the solar system. All right. Now, how else do we know that the book is pointing to celestial phenomena? The narrative is filled with numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me go to my notes. Okay, we see numbers in the book, the ages of the prophets, when they say Methuselah lived to be 369 years old or 360 years old or whatever number they name for him, right? 930 or whatever. I mean, 981 years. All of these numbers, these ages that they ascribe to their prophets come out to the number 9. All right. 9 is the sacred number of geometry. All right. 360 circle. Any number you multiply 9 by, sub adds up to 9. You know, like 18. 9 times 2 is 18. And 1 plus 8 is 9. 9 times 9 is 81. And 1 plus 8 is 9. You understand? So you sub add all those numbers together, it returns back to 9. So because we see these stellar numbers in the Bible, we know that they are masking stellar cycles. We see it again in the book, I think is Genesis. Let me see. Where did I put it at? Okay, here we have in 2 Kings the 37 years, the first 37 years of the captivity. We find that Nebuchadnezzar's bondage was harsh. And then in the second part of the captivity, which was 33 years, we find that his reign was slight. When we look in Genesis 46, when it talks about Leah's descendants, in the story of Joseph and Jacob and Israel going into Egypt for famine, right? That 33 of Leah's descendants went into Egypt first. And then 3 more groups that added up to 37. So we see the pairing of the number 33 and 37 in the book of Kings. We find it that Herod was 37 years old and he ruled for 33 years, as the Bible states. That Jesus was crucified at the age of 33. So we see this number 33 and we see the number 37 and we see them often paired. All right. Together they equal 70. Right. 70 is another one of those mystical numbers that you find in sacred geometry and repeated throughout the Bible. Well, what significance does the number 70, 33, and 37 have with celestial science? The eclipse cycle, which has been, the eclipse phenomena has been regarded a sign from heaven from every single religion that you can attest to. Okay. In Islam, they have a specific prayer whenever there's an eclipse. All the ancient people had all kinds of superstition and tradition tied up in the eclipse, and so did the Israelites and the ancient Africans. All of them had some significant spiritual concept attached to the eclipse. So we find throughout the Bible these 2 numbers being referenced. If you study eclipses, like I said earlier, you need a knowledge of celestial science to see what is being codified in the Bible, to even understand where it comes from, right? So because eclipses are said to happen in groups of 70, 70 eclipses compose what we call a saros. All right. And in the first half of the saros, the first sar, which is a half of a saros being 18 years, the first 9 years of the saros being called a sar, you have 37 eclipses. In the second sar of that cycle, you have 33. Okay. And for every full eclipse you have of the sun, you have exactly 1 sar, or 9 years and 5 days later, a lunar eclipse. So the entire cycle can be matched up: solar eclipse, lunar eclipse, solar eclipse, lunar eclipse, solar eclipse, lunar eclipse, 2s and 2s. And it is said in the Bible that Jesus sent his disciples out in 2s. All right. So you see how the mathematics of the cycle is encoded into the event narrative in the Bible. We have more. All right. At the very beginning of the book, in the book of Genesis, it talks about the days, right? God made the first day, and he made the second day, and the third day, and the fourth day, and he made the lights to make the days, right? Well, if you notice, it says in the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and he divided, and he divided the day from the night, and that was the first day. Okay, so we have here references to day and night, light and dark. This is the revolution of the earth and the nature of the cycles, because it is from the days that all calendars and all measures of time are made in terms of in great scale, right? So later it goes through, he created this and he created this and he created, then he created a greater light to rule the day and a lesser light to rule the night. So in the beginning he said, let there be light, right? What was the light in the beginning? And what was the greater light and the lesser light? We understand that the greater light is the sun to rule the day, and the lesser light is the night. I mean, it rules the night, is the moon. So what is the greater light that was created in the beginning, the very first mention of light? That was God's will itself manifested, right? That's what they want to say. But on a galactic scale, you have the galaxy first. Then you have the bodies that are in it. The galactic center can be symbolic of the great light that was created first, and then the sun and the moon. All right. When we look at the story of Jesus, Jesus born in December, right there. When you look at it, you're going to find Christians and Hebrews that are going to argue, no, he wasn't, because it said it wasn't, and it said it was the census, and the census was taken at this time of year. But that has nothing to do with the allegory of the story. He was born on December the 25th. And why do they pick this date as the symbolic date for the birth of Christ? Because this is the day of the year, of every year, in these modern times, when the sun daylight hours start to increase, and thus the sun's strength starts to increase. Thus the sun begins his yearly life cycle. He is born on December the 25th. Okay? And he dies on December 22nd. And why is he said to die? Because of December 22nd, when in the northern hemisphere, you have about just over 7 hours of night, and just under, just over 7 hours of day, and 17 hours of night. Okay, this is when you notice that in the wintertime, where it gets dark like 4:30 in the evening, and it doesn't get light again till like 7:45, 7:30 in the morning. Okay, this is what you call the cycle of the solstices and the equinoxes, right? Where the daylight hours increase, they come even, then they decrease. All right. This symbolism we find throughout the Bible. All right. When we talk about the crucifixion of Christ on the cross, he stands in the center, right? When you got the two thieves on each side of him, this is the equinox, right? Which is perfect equilibrium, Aries and Libra, astrologically speaking. And you have the summer solstice and the winter solstice. And I got this from, so that people don't think I'm plagiarizing, I got this parable from a brother named Malik Jabbar, watching Malik Jabbar lecture on Astro-Theology. All right. And when you look at the crucifixion scene, you got the equinox in the middle. You got the thief that was rejected, or that was deemed unrighteous, and you had the thief that God saw favor with, or the one that Jesus liked. Okay. And what do these two represent? Well, number one, they're called thieves. If you understand the nature of the daylight hours, at equinox, you got 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of nighttime, right? And each day that gets closer and closer and closer to winter, from the autumnal equinox, the daylight hours get shorter and the nightlight hours get longer until we get to December 22nd, when we have the longest night and the shortest amount of daytime. And that thief on the left side of Christ is the winter. Where in summer, from December 25th up until summer, or 0 degrees of Cancer, right, which is June 21st or 22nd, right? It fluctuates. But June 21st and 22nd are the days when Cancer starts. The daylight hours increase by about a minute every day. So that it goes from 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night at the spring equinox on March 21st. The daylight hours slowly increase until we get to June 21st, and we have 17 hours of day and about 7 hours of night. Okay. Now, this celestial phenomena was given status as scripture, as universal law, because it represented the shift of seasons in the year that our lives were dependent on back then, still even. Okay, but even more so back then, because we were growing food. We didn't have machines. We didn't have artificial environments for us to grow food. So knowing when the seasons began, knowing when the plant determined a fruitful harvest, and knowing when to store your food and get ready for winter, your survival depended on it. So this knowledge was elevated above all other knowledge. Okay, this is how we get religion and scholarship. We got other examples in the Bible, okay, that support the idea that celestial science is a body of knowledge that should be studied and is beneficial to man that comes from the Bible, right? Matthew, second Matthew, or the second chapter of Matthew, pardon me, verses 1 through 3, gave reference to the wise men who have knowledge that are righteous like stars. All you have to do is pull it up. The wise men that said, we see, pardon me, I'm referencing Daniel 12, 2 through 4. Pardon me. I'm not a Bible expert, all right? So I was referencing Daniel 12, 2 through 4, when it says that the wise will shine as the righteous, and they shall turn many to righteousness as the stars. So this here shows you that they are glorifying, or that they are exalting, the knowledge of celestial science. A second example in the Bible that shows that they exalted celestial science is that they called the men who came to bring Jesus gifts wise. They didn't call them wicked. And what they had said in Matthew, 2nd chapter, verses 1 through 3, the wise men said, we have seen his star in the east. This is what they told Herod. So to see that astrology was an exalted science and celestial science, period, because it wasn't just about the astrologics. It was cosmology. They embedded their version of the creation of the universe in stellar symbolism. And there were 3 types of stellar symbolism going on here. All right. You got to understand that. So when you look, you're just not going to have enough aptitude to understand the entirety of it without a knowledge of astronomy to some extent. Because in astronomy, we have 3 different hemispheres that are being observed. We have the Arctic, we have the Antarctic, and we have just like on Earth, we have the equatorial, or the zodiac. Okay, so you got the North Pole stars, the South Pole stars, which are not seen from the north, and thus those constellations don't find symbolism in the Bible. You don't see any reference to the Southern Cross or any of the constellations that you see in the northern hemisphere, as we do in the book of Job. We find mention of Pleiades. We find mention of Altair. We find mention of Draco in Revelations when it talked about the dragon that swept a third of the stars from heaven. And people are like, wow, a third of the stars. Do you know how many that is? And you're not even thinking geometrically. The constellation of Draco wraps around the pole star, which is symbolic to the axis of the earth, the world tree. And the Draco is 120 degrees it wraps around there. This symbolism became the symbolism of the snake and the serpent in the Bible. Okay, but when they said that the dragon in Revelations, the reference to the dragon was referencing a third of the stars, Draco is 120 degrees in length and encompasses 1/3 of the stars. 1/3 of the 360-degree circle is 120 degrees. So if you understand that you see these stellar symbolism placed in the scripture, you know that the celestial science is being encoded within it. Like where I could go from here.
Let me ask you this, Rod. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Could you tell me a little bit about the astrological nature of Lucifer? We talk about the crucifixion of Christ and that whole narrative. What's up with the astrological nature of Lucifer? Where does he fit in the cosmos, my brother?
Okay, Lucifer originally is the morning star, and it referenced the planet Venus. Venus was glorified because Venus's morning star phase lasts for about 264 days. Okay, that is about a season for growing food. So Venus was associated with food. Even in astrology right now, it's associated with food. But in the beginning, before Christianity, before Hebrewism, before any of that, was the Astro-Theology, and the worship of Ishtar and Venus and all of that was prominent. Well, any previous gods that existed before the standing god were turned into devils. So Lucifer, Venus, was turned into a devil.
Is that I seen a YouTube video that said the flag of Islam, you know, it got the crescent moon and the star. They saying that's Venus in that flag. You ever heard that?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So that is, huh?
It is Venus. But you have to understand, many people in the ancient days worship Venus. Okay, and Venus was associated in Arabia with the goddess Alat. Okay, who is the feminine version of Allah. Okay, so when they stopped worshiping Alat, they didn't throw the symbolism away. They still kept the Kaaba. They still kept the 5 prayers, the 7 prayers, really. Okay, 2 of them being optional. The Sabianism, which is stellar religion that was practiced in Arabia, part of the remnants of that stellar religion remained in Islam. Okay, and during the conquest of Constantinople, all right, the Turkish caliph, their astrologers saw the moon conjuncting Venus the night that they were making a strategic attack. Okay. And from that vision, he took the Turkish flag. Oh, okay. Islam's symbol is not a star and a crescent. That is the Ottoman Empire's flag. And because the Ottomans were Muslim and they proliferated and spread Islam all over, this crescent and the star that is the Turkish flag became universally accepted as a symbol for the religion of Islam. But the Prophet Muhammad used the moon, not Venus.
Interesting.
But you can't say entirely that Islam didn't embed Venus in it because of all of its septenary acts, if you understand what I mean by that. They do things in sevens. And the Friday, astrologically, is ruled by the planet Venus. All right.
Yeah,
So
right.
they say that the Muslims were worshiping Venus because Alat is similar to Aphrodite, who is the Greek version of the Roman Venus. So Alat is Venus, you see? And even we know that it was a goddess before it was masculinized by Muhammad and his crew, because Alat, Menat, and all those other goddesses were the main one worshipped at that Kaaba. Okay, they were all stellar deities. But man moved from worshiping the earth to worshiping stars to worshiping space itself. See, so you know the concept of God being invisible, all encompassing. Out of him cometh everything, and to him everything return. He is absolute. Abound. This shit is space. Nothing you can say about that creator in your theological vocabulary is any different than any scientific term you apply to latent space.
So what about the we talked about we're going through these characters, Jesus, Lucifer. When the Bible's mentions Satan, does this, like a lot of people say, it has to do with Saturn? Satan becomes Saturn?
That's interesting, because you have people. I used to submit to that idea, but I only did so because of my lack of understanding for the astrological symbolism. The reason why we say in modern astrological circles that Saturn is the devil is because he represents traditionally to the West, all those things that are undesirable. Having discipline, regimen, rules and regulations. See, they don't really want to be subject to that. The masses of people. The masses of people don't want what Saturn really represents. Right. Saturn is discipline, but he's also your bones. You see? So I would not say that Saturn is the devil. Because a great portion of Christianity comes from the Egyptian mysteries. The devil in ancient Egypt was Mars. Mars is red. Mars is hot. Mars causes harm and separation. Mars rules knives, which you use to separate things. And the word Satan means divider. Okay? So it didn't originally apply to Saturn. It applied to the malefic Mars. Saturn in ancient Egypt was called Horus the Bull. So he was looked at with positive. He was looked at, and his attributes was looked at in a positive light. So I don't know. You get some people that want to say that Satan comes from Saturn, but the language that Satan comes from, Hebrew, Aramaic, Akkadian, the word Arabic, the word is shaitan, which means adversary. Saturn was the name of the father of the gods, which has nothing to do with adversarial activity.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. In terms of 2024, and not just 2024, but moving forward, is there any particular story in the Bible that you see playing out now? Like what story could we grab from the Bible and you'd be like, this shit is playing out right now in front of our eyes, and we don't even know it because we don't know how to read and interpret this holy book that is full of prophecy?
Would I grab some scriptures and apply it to today? I must say this first. Yes is the answer to your question, but I must say this before.
I mean, look what's going on in the Middle East right now.
Yeah, I heard you. Let me say yes, but let me say this first. That there is no span of time. Let me put it this way. We look at any civilization from beginning to end in hindsight. So we're looking at civilizations that have fell off, right? Every last one of them had a birth, a plateau, and a decline. You understand? So that which we find in the Bible, we can find the rise, the the plateau and the decline of any civilization, past or present, in the Bible. I want to say that first. Because it references cycles that are constantly going on and have been constantly going on since infinity and will continue to constantly repetitiously go on. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So, but to look at, I would say this. There was a fixed square eclipse in 1999. And when I say fixed square, it means it was composed of the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac. It was the eagle, which is Scorpio, the man, which is Aquarius, Leo, which is the lion, and Taurus, which is the bull. Okay. I believe that the entire Bible is a calendar. Okay. And that the references to the 4 beasts in Revelations is a reference to that eclipse that occurred in 1999. I'll say that.
The eclipse that occurred in 1999.
Yeah. So if you want, so after that, I don't have on cap on my head anything from the book of Revelations that would point to what just recently happened. I could find that, but I haven't. I didn't look. But what I can dig into Revelation for is reference to the beasts and the throne of God, right? Those 4 beasts are the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac: Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Leo. So I noticed that the first book of the Bible, Genesis, outlines how to make the lunar calendar. Okay? If you understand the mechanics of the lunar calendar, you can see it in the book of Genesis, where it talks about at first he made the light and saw it was good. That is the new moon, right? The very first crescent of the new moon was the light that he saw. Then he made the greater light and the lesser light to rule the night. That is the full moon. And how do we know that this applies to the lunar calendar? Because from the new moon to the full moon is 14 days. And has been 14 days for more than 100,000 years going backwards. Okay? So the fact that they said to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy is what that 7-day fractal of time is used, because 7 days is 1/4 of a lunar cycle, because there are 28 days in one entire lunar cycle. You understand?
Yeah.
So from that point, the fact that they focused on the moon from the very outset and not the sun boggles me. But at any rate, we see that the moon was given its symbolism in that narrative. So we know that the moon is the #1 timer for ancient man. This is how we kept time: the Egyptian calendar and the Mayan calendar and the Hindu calendar and the Chinese calendar and whatever calendar you want to come up with before the solar calendars started becoming popular, were all globally, ubiquitously lunar. So when we get to the later portion of the book, we understand that the lunar symbolism is still rolling. Okay, lunar astrology was the precursor to solar astrology, and solar astrology didn't become popularized or didn't become en vogue until like the 1st century BC. Okay, or the year up to the year 1. Okay, so with that in mind, that all ancient astrological systems are lunar, then we know that the Astro-Theology in the Bible is not only solar, not only stellar, but it is also lunar. So when it talks about Revelations, there's all kinds of astrological symbolisms in there in the first place. The fact that they use the number 7, all right? First of all, you got to realize this, that even though we in modern day know that there are 10 planets, maybe even more, Saturn and a few planets, outer planets, right? Trans-Plutonian planets that exist in our solar system, we basically use 10 of them, all right? Including the sun and the moon, all right? Now, ancient man only used the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, Let me go through it again. Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter. Yeah, that's it. Those 7 planets. Okay? And the basis of these 7 planets was symbolized in everybody's religion because we find the number 7 in everybody's divine stories. Okay?
Mhm.
So when you see the reference to the days of the week, that's astro-theology. Monday is Moon Day. Tuesday is Mars Day. Wednesday is Mercury Day. Thursday, Thor's Day, is Jupiter's Day. Friday or Frigg's Day is Venus's Day. Saturn belongs to the Saturday belongs to Saturn, and Sunday belongs to the sun. And we know that this language, this celestial language, was embedded in Africa too, because we got the lion, Leo. Where else on earth do lions become ravaging or become an issue to be dealt with by man between or in the summer? Okay, between the dates of July and August. Every year for millennia in Africa, this is the drought season in the eastern horn of Africa. And this is the season where man is most likely to encounter a lion. All right. So we can see the African influence on the zodiac there, as well as the culture of the Akan and the Ashanti people, where they name their children after the days of the week. Right?
Mhm.
All of the gods were personifications of the planets or some planetary phenomena. The myth of Osiris is a solar myth. Okay? So we know that the sun was recognized by the Egyptians in this religion. Osiris's whole life is solar and lunar. The fact that he was cut up into 14 pieces is the lunar aspect of it. The fact that his wife resurrected him is the lunar aspect of it, because it is the moon that splits the seed and causes the plant to grow, right? So it is Set that took his phallus and created offspring. But we know the story because he was killed by the king of the south, Set. And Set's color was red. And the lower half of the zodiac starts in autumn when nature turns from green to red. All right.
Right,
And in
right.
Egypt, the weather is such that there's the desert starts to get hot. They get a real hot dry season where there's a lot of desert storms. And this was attributed to the south because those storms came up from the south. And this was attributed to soot. But when we look at what we call in celestial science, the tropos, okay? The zodiac with the earth in the center as a universal. We have a northern half and a southern half. And the murder of Osiris concurs with the sign of Scorpio, which is the sign of murder in astrology. And then he went into the underworld and was resurrected as Horus the next day. So we understand the astro-theology, the solar theology that is hidden in the story of Osiris. The fact that the sun rises the next day, fresh and new, unbroken, untampered with, and comes back to the beginning of the year, untampered with, unmolested, is symbolic to the resurrection. They say you will be resurrected whole after the cycle of the sun.
Raku, who's the we talked about Christ earlier. There's a man running around on earth calling himself I believe it's the vicar of Christ, the Pope.
Yeah.
Who's the Pope supposed to represent, cosmologically speaking?
He's the sun.
He's supposed to be the sun.
Yeah, and all the bishops of the planets and the signs and all of that stuff. But being the vicar of God, you're the son. If you look at the Roman Catholic Church, it's set up just like the pharaonic hierarchy.
Yeah, yeah.
So Pharaoh is Hero. Hero is the son. The Pope is the imitation Pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
He's the imitation Hero. He's the son.
Do you ever, like, in your studies, since we're supposed to be in some important times right now. I'm talking about, like, we don't even realize how important they are. It's the this big procession in the equinoxes, I believe it's called, happen every 24,000 years. Shit is going down. We're going from one age to the next. Do you feel as though, they say the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius, is your information, Raku, is it changing based on what we're experiencing, the changes we're experiencing on Earth? Do you feel as though your information used to be concrete? Do you find yourself ever making adjustments because shit is changing in the cosmos, shit is changing molecularly in our DNA and us in our whatever? Do you find yourself having to make adjustments, my brother? You've been doing it for a long time, so you would know if you got to make adjustments.
Yeah, there's the precession of the equinoxes causes the tropical zodiac to appear to move backwards 1 degree every 72 years.
Yeah.
Through the zodiac.
Right.
It causes the first day of spring to move back 1 day every 72 years, and it causes the sun to move celestially backwards 1 degree every 72 years. Right. This phenomena is called the Great Year. Precession of the equinoxes is the basis of the timing. There's a lot of controversy in astrological circles as to whether we move from one age, whether we are still in the age of Pisces or whether we are still in the age of Aquarius. I use a method of measure that determines that we are in the 22nd degree of the age of Aquarius, moving back towards the 0 degree. We are now in a sub-age. So what was your question? Are we in the age of Aquarius? Do they have impact on? I can answer all that.
No, I want to know, do you find yourself having to make adjustments to your teachings and to your writings because shit is changing so rapidly?
No, I don't have to change the teaching at all. We account for that. That's part of the learning. The fact that there are 2 zodiacs. So if I wanted to use Vedic astrology for prediction, Vimsotari, right? Then I would need to make an adjustment to my zodiac because they use a sidereal zodiac, which in relation to the tropical zodiac is moving, or the other way around. The tropical zodiac is moving in relation to the sidereal, whoever side you want to pick. But we have to constantly make adjustments every year, adjustment of seconds of arc for the precession, but that doesn't change the meaning. Fire is still hot. Fire gonna be hot whether I burn your ass in China or whether I burn your ass in Mexico. Fire gonna be the same in Mexico as it is in China. So what I mean is we don't have to change the meaning of the sun, the meaning of Mars, the meaning of Venus, simply because we're in a new age. Yes, we're in a new age, but fire's still hot. Fire just as hot, a flame is just as hot today as it was 1,000,000 years ago, even though we are in a totally different age. So there's no need to adjust the teachings. The variables are part of the teaching, and how to deal with the variables calculatively are part of the lessons.
Is there, when you look at the religions and you study the religions, do you feel as though one religion has it more together in terms of tying itself into astro-theology, like Islam, Christianity, or Judaism? If you had to pick one, would you pick one, or is it they're all pretty much the same for you?
I'm of the mind that they are all pretty much the same. But I would say this, that Islam is more obviously astro-theologic than Christianity. The Quran itself is more obviously an ode to the universe than the Bible.
Give me an example. You saying that? Give me that's not. I like that. Give me an example.
Okay. We know that the Arabian zodiac was taken from the Egyptian zodiac, and the Egyptians started their zodiac with the constellation of the Pleiades, which to the naked eye is composed of 7 stars. And this star cluster was called the 7 sisters, the 7 Orisha, the 7 Rishis, the 7 Urshu. So this was the beginning of the ancient zodiac, right?
Right.
The Quran starts off with Surah Al-Fatiha, which is composed of 7 verses.
Wow.
After the Pleiades, which is the constellation with 7 stars that begins the zodiac for these ancient people, right? The next constellation is Taurus. What's the next chapter after Al-Fatiha? The cow. Taurus is a bull. The next chapter, and Taurus is a huge constellation, and that chapter in the Quran is a huge chapter.
Wow.
The 3rd chapter of the book is called, the 3rd surah is called Imran, who is, tradition holds that he was the father of the 2 brothers, Moses and Aaron. Father of 2 brothers is the title. The 3rd chapter is the father of 2 brothers. Well, the 3rd constellation is Gemini, the 2 brothers.
2 brothers. You schooling me now. You schooling me now.
The 4th chapter, the 4th surah, the 4th degree of the Quran is called An-Nisa, which translates from Arabic into English, the women.
Right.
In the zodiac, there's only one sign that points to women. It's Cancer, which is the 4th sign of the zodiac. So the first 120 degrees of the zodiac is memorialized in the symbolism in the first 4 chapters of the Quran. Furthermore, there are verses in the Quran that instruct you. So, you get Muslims and Christians that say, oh, no, there's no astrology in Islam. There's no astrology in our religion. That shit didn't start out like that and all this other stuff, right?
Yeah.
They ain't did no research, okay? Because the Quran mentions several times different stars and the state of the planets and things of this nature. And it also gives instructions. It says, look at my signs in the sky. Okay? That's not a request. It's not the Most High saying, it's not Muhammad saying that the Most High said, will you please look up at my signs and tell me what you think? No, it was nothing like that. It was a command. Look at my signs in the heavens and see them in the earth and in your own selves. That right there is pure astrology. You look at the signs, then you see where they manifest, and you even see them in yourself.
You mentioned Cancer being the only sign that points to women. Somebody wrote this in the comment. I thought it too when you said that.
Because Virgo is a woman. Yeah. But what's the gender of Virgo? See, Virgo points to workers, male or female. Virgo points to serial. Okay? Virgo points to endeavor. I'm talking astrologically here. Virgo is a woman. But Virgo isn't the sign of women. Cancer is. In everybody's astrology. Just like Aries is the man. Aries is manly. When we translate it, it represents things that are macho, things that are masculine, right? So Aries points at the man. But Aquarius, how come he don't point at the man? He's the only man in the zodiac. But really, he's not. You got Castor and Pollux, you got Gemini. No. Cancer's the only sign of women. Virgo, the word women is not in the keyword for Virgo in anybody's astrological discipline, just because it is depicted as a woman. I hope that answers their question.
But by the way, family, we passed the hour mark. Give me some Q&A. I'm gonna take a couple of questions from y'all before we get out of here. That last breakdown about Islam from Akhu, man, that was some powerful shit. Give me some questions, y'all, for Akhu. I'm gonna ask the brother some questions. Before we get to the questions, Akhu, tell the people how they can reach out to you real quick for the readings, my brother.
Okay, you can call me, and I prefer that you call me. You can find me on Instagram. My name is right here. Okay. Right. On Instagram, Cosmo361. I prefer, if you want a reading, you should call me. Don't DM me. Don't text my phone because I get too many in the course of one day to worry about your one butt. Okay. So call me, and you might have to call more than once, but call me at 516-881-6992 between the hours of 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Right? If you call me outside of those hours, I'm not going to answer to do business with you. Okay. Call me between 1 and 7. Let me know. I do a free 5-minute sample one time for whoever calls. Okay. And you can have several of your people's call. Right. If you have doubts as to my consistency, have several of your friends call too and get a sample along with yourself. All right. Mm-hmm. Now, if you want a full reading, you got to let me know that's what you want. I charge $500 for a full reading. Okay. You don't have to pay all at once. You pay half up front. And I guarantee you there's a waiting list. So, when you come to me, there's going to be anywhere from 70 to 80 people in front of you. Count on that. So count on booking about a month and a half or 2 months later than when you call. You're going to need to put something down in order for me to keep that date for you. If you want me to hold a date, you want me to commit to it. And I do all my readings on Skype, right? So it can be recorded. So you have a copy of it. I do a 30-day follow-up. Any one of those days, you can follow up with me on what you've experienced so far. Because the reading isn't just so you can know how much money you're going to make and when. The reading is so that you understand your life rhythm cycle. Understanding when you're at your peak potential and when you're not. And you're not always at your peak potential. Okay? It's like if you ever worked out, Rich, every day for 2 months, right? You do a routine when you're working out. So many reps and this and that and the other, right? Mm-hmm. You find that in your workout, you get a good day where you kill your routine and barely bust a sweat. And then about 2 weeks later, same exact routine, kicking your ass.
Oh, yeah.
And you've been at it every day. Well, if you understand that your strength ebbs and flows, it goes up and down. Well, so does your money. So does your sociability. So does your emotion. So does everything about you. And astrology is a tool that we use to measure those ups and downs. So you can know when you're in your peak potential and when you're not. You ever try to do endeavor, an accomplishment over and over and over, and you're like, I don't understand why I can't get it. I just keep trying. No matter what, I keep trying. If you knew when to do it, you wouldn't have to do it so much.
Facts.
That's what
Let's
I'm
yeah. I'm here for. Let's get to a couple of these. Somebody says, in your studies of calendars, have you come across the Phoenix motif?
I have studied a calendar, a cycle called the Naros that they attribute to the Phoenix. Outside of that, I don't know what he's mentioning, what he's referencing. Mm-hmm. The Saros is an eclipse cycle, and the Naros is a super eclipse cycle, 600 years and 19 days. Okay, this super cycle is said to reset eclipses. In other words, if there was an eclipse at 1 degree of Taurus at 12 o'clock noon today, then exactly 600 years and 19 days or so from today, there would be another eclipse at exactly that same spot. Well, what happens when you look at specific dates, like your birthday, right? You look at your birthday in 600-year phases. You get a chart for every 600 years of your birthday. You'll see that out of about 30 charts, 3 of those charts look a lot like your birth chart. From this phenomena, the Naros, the 600-year period, is derived the concept of reincarnation. Because if you look like 1,800 years after my birthday, that's 3 600-year cycles after my birthday, you're going to find a chart that looks very much like the chart you'll find on October 30th, 1965. Okay? So I wonder, if I had to read this person, I would say the same thing about them that I say about myself. I would say the same thing about Venus and Sagittarius to this person as I would to that person, right? So if this person, 1,800 years from now, has a chart that highly resembles mine, then there's no doubt that he has a life that highly resembles mine. And from that idea comes the concept that not only history, but people repeat every 600 years. From that calendar comes the idea that the Redeemer comes every 600 years. Thus, we have Siddhartha Gautama. 600 years later, we got Confucius. 600 years later, we got Moses. 600 years later, we got Jesus. 600 years later, we got Muhammad. You see? And every 600 years, you see this cycle of evolution manifest. A Redeemer comes, and it's not always exactly 600 years to the day. It's like 698 years this time. Next year, 613 years. But the average of all of them comes down to that narrow cycle of 600 years. So from that idea comes the phoenix, comes the reemergence of cycles. And this is what gives birth to the phoenix motif, from my understanding. Diamond Jim.
All right, let's get to the next question. In the study of knowledge itself, do you hold astrology above metaphysical occult teachings like the power of the mind, mind is all, etc., or do you intertwine them? We've talked about this. You've talked about this before. Yeah.
First of all, let me say this. Astrology is a metaphysical occult teaching. It's not separate. Secondly, I would say it is the code language for all of them. Number one, the ancients didn't practice metaphysics without astrology. That's you modern day niggas doing that. Okay, there's a time for everything. Okay, and to know the times is what gives you what you say. If you know when to plant a seed, you know to plant the seed in spring, you get a big harvest. You don't know when to plant, you plant in summertime, it still grow, but it ain't gonna produce the plant that it would have produced had you produced in spring. This is the nature of magic too. There's a time to execute things. So astrology is not separate. I intertwine them. I don't intertwine them. They are already intertwined. You can't untwine them, intertwine them. So the power of the mind, I don't give it what everybody else does, because I understand that the mind comes with the body and it leaves with the body. Okay, the desire gives birth to mind, and that mind gives birth to thought. And if you understand this, then you know there are certain things that your mind can't warp, like metaphysical laws can't be warped by mind. Okay, so certain things mind can't perceive. We cannot perceive the Most High. We can't comprehend the vastness of space. So mind is limited. What part of you is not? That's the part of you who you are. That part of you is using your mind. That part of you, your mind belongs to. And what part of you am I referencing? This is, when you say knowledge of self, who are you? You're not going to say that you're this body, because the body belongs to you. You're not going to say that you are your voice, that you are your words, because they come from you, right? There's a part of you that sees, that hears, that feels, that you ain't never seen, can't see, that you ain't never heard, because it doesn't talk. It uses this and this to talk with. You see? There's a part of it that is always at the center. No matter where you are, it never moves from its center. That is yourself. And everything outside of that is a tool of yourself. So metaphysical, occult teachings, and all of that is all enmeshed. I can't separate them. Do I believe in magic? Indeed. I set my intentions and execute them frequently on a timer.
You said on a timer. I like how you ended that right there. Let me get to the next question. How can we use our natal chart to rise above religious and social moralism to restore faith in who we are?
Woo! Well, that's an excellent question. Hey, popping tonight, girl. I look. The natal chart reveals to you your trials and tribulations before you even encounter them. Okay, so it's very simple. Mars, say for example, the planet Mars moving to a conjunction with Saturn in your birth chart. All right, let's just use this as an example. The knowledge of that motion will prepare you for any challenge that those two planets give indication of. If you understand that Mars is an aspect of yourself that has to do with the execution of intent, what part of you do you use to say, my nose itch, hand, scratch my nose, right? You say that that's your will, that's your intent, right? You execute that intent by performing the act that you tell it, this is Mars. So if you understand that the cycle of Mars will reveal your vitality, your strength, and your weaknesses, as well as your low ebb vitality, then you have more knowledge of self. To rise above religious and social moralism, I don't think that man can escape morals. So the morals that we put into religion were morals before they were religious. For example, I'm not talking about going to church on Sunday and that being a good thing and not going to church being a bad thing. That is something that I would call religious moralism. But to say murder is a sin, right? And that is a religious moral, that is a natural moral. Anywhere you go on the earth at any epoch of time, if you kill somebody, you're guilty of murder. You see? And murder has been shunned by every race everywhere. Or murder of your own, anyway. It's been shunned by everybody everywhere. So the chart is used to define who you are. Because there are parts of you you don't know. People think because they know what they like, that they know themselves. Tell me what you're going to be doing 3 years from now on March the 3rd. Tell me where the fuck you're going to be and exactly what you're going to be doing. I got a better idea than you if I know your natal chart and you don't. So that should show you how it gives you the ups. I'm going to give you another example, right? People say, I don't know why this bothers me. It just does. Your chart will show you why it bothers you. It'll show you the aspect between the two planets that represent you and that thing, the sun and that thing that you have an issue with. And you'll understand. I still don't get it entirely because I read people and they say to me, oh, wow, now I understand why I feel like this and why I did this and why I did that. I never really stopped to say, explain that to me. Because that's not my job to understand. I just tell them. But you see when you get the chart, I'll give you an example. Okay? I have a very strong penchant for philosophy, and I love debate. Okay, where some people are upset, they're disturbed by someone disagreeing with them. I eat that shit up. I love it, man. It's like working out. Okay, and because it makes me better and it makes them better. Steel sharpens steel. But this is because I have Mars conjunct Venus. Now I understand what astrology, my enjoyment of it. But for another person who finds debate unethical and uncouth and unbefitting of a scholar and all that other shit, you'll find that this individual has a harsh aspect or a conventionally undesirable aspect being made to his Mars planet, or maybe between his Mars and Mercury. So where one person is given to it, another person is not. Well, who teaches us these things outside of astrology? I can tell you with confidence, nobody. So, yeah, I think the natal chart is used to define self and to define the processes self finds itself in.
All right, all right. Let's get to another. All right. Well, since we on natal chart, this brother wants to know. I don't understand the natal chart system at all. Can you give a short summary on of how to use it?
Bobby Word, Pearly Falcon, absolutely not. There is no short. I'm going to try, but there is no short solution because it's a long process in the first place. But the natal chart system, you have to understand that the natal chart system is based on the ascendant. The ascending sign is what your sign is. The sun represents your individuality, how you identify yourself in the world. You know, I see me as a young God, right? You see an old man, right? Well, that's the sun. I see me as a young God. But what you see, my avatar, that's the rising sign. So if you're doing natal astrology, you got to understand that when they're talking about you, the person, not you, the man, you, the mind, you, the consciousness, they're talking about you, the person, you, the human being. This is the ascendant. The first thing you're going to need to do is learn the symbols. There are 29 basic symbols. You need to learn them and learn what they point to. I don't have it. The astrological horoscope maker and delineator by Llewellyn George. The A to Z astrological horoscope maker and delineator is the name of the book. That's a good place to start to learn where that book explains very well the fundamental meaning for each one of the symbols. Once you understand what each one of those symbols point to, then you can begin to interpret them. Okay? Like, for example, people are Aquarius risings, particularly. All right? 90% of them, not all of them, because planetary positions will alter how things manifest to an extent. But most Aquarius risings have an issue with the way their disciplining parent raised them. Okay? This is just a given, right? Because I use it on the time on all Aquariuses, white, black, yellow, brown, doesn't matter, right? See, they don't know why they can't stand the way their father did things. When it is pointed out to them that it is part of their destiny to have a negligent father. Because what people don't realize psychologically, the fact is, whether you believe in astrology or not, that the negligence of your parents is what contributes to your independence because you had to learn how to do it without them. And so when people say, oh, my mother wasn't there for me, she never did, I had to do all this myself. Well, that makes you even more powerful because you saved yourself from the whatever consequences that your mother would have saved you from. But here you learn to do it yourself by yourself, which makes you stronger with that regard. What people don't realize is the chart points to the things that your soul came down here to endure, which is why if a woman gets raped, it's right there in her chart that she's getting raped. You see, I read this woman on Clubhouse, all right, and she was a Scorpio rising. She had some bad planets in Taurus. The ruler of her 10th house, Aquarius, was in Taurus, and she said after I read her, she said, you did pretty good. You read 90% of me. But there's one part you didn't talk about. And I knew because I left it out on purpose. I said, what? You were sexually abused as a child? She said, yeah. I said, was it your father or the friend of a father? Because as an astrologer, I just know it came through the father. So it could have been him or somebody that came through him, right? Came to her through him. So she was like, yeah, it was my father. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. She was like, but I do. I was like, yeah, but I don't. I have an issue talking about it in public. She says, I don't. Well, later, she called me, all that out the way. That was to give you the understanding for this. She called me later and she said, why would God subject me to that? And I asked her, I said, what do you do for a living? She says, I'm a counselor for abused women. And I asked her how long she had been doing it. She said she had been doing it for more than 15 years. Okay. This is just last year, by the way. Okay. So then I said to her, so how many women over the last 15 years have you saved? She says, I can't even count. I said, would you have been so invested into helping those women recover from their trauma had you not been subjected to it? So saving all those women from their trauma, you had to be traumatized in order to even help them with any type of genuine intention. So, as an astrologer, we see all these things as necessary to the development of the human soul. Okay, we come down here to be challenged by the energies that we live under. Okay, we strive from childhood to get over our temperament. The shit that makes us angry. We strive from childhood to learn how to act cool, so don't be wilding. You know what I mean, bitch? You the super cool nigga. I'm the wilding nigga. Okay. We strive all our lives to hone these qualities, given the energy that we have. Okay. We cannot master any one of these emotions or mental capacities in one lifetime. This is why I subscribe to the idea of reincarnation. Not only do the stars, motion of the planets, support that idea, but the fact that, you say you got your temper down pat. My temperament down pat. Can't nobody make me mad. I decide to get mad. The fact that you still get angry, nigga, shows that you ain't overcame it. The fact that you have to restrain it shows that you ain't a master of it, because it takes no effort to do what you've mastered. You see? So we here on this earth being subjected to these motions, learning how to use them. The yogi sits in meditation, ignoring all these pushes so that he can realize that focal center that I was referring to earlier in its purity, without all the distraction of all the energies, of all the electromagnetism that we subject to on a daily. So I can't answer that question in short summary. I mean, if I gave it to you in the shortest form, is you have to understand the geometry, understand the symbolism, and translate that in hindsight. You look at what has happened in your life and how those planets point to what has happened. Once you realize that, it is nothing to see how they point to what is going to happen.
Facts. Hey, Rob, man. Hell of a show as usual, man. What a way to end it on that. I love the way you articulate this science, my brother. Once again, before we get out of here.
I take that as an extreme compliment, because when I met you, you was one of the most skeptical niggas.
Yeah, I remember the first day. I remember.
Yeah, you was like, I don't know nothing about that shit. What, that shit ain't shit. I was like, man, you don't even know. You'll see. Yeah. Y'all can reach me any day between 1 and 7 p.m. Eastern Time. 516-881-6992. And feel free to give my number to whoever. Come on over to Instagram and follow me, Cosmo361. Subscribe to my subscription feature on Instagram, because I'm going to be doing lectures over there too.
Yo, well, one of the illest shit you ever told me, Ra, I remember when my son was first born, and I gave you his date. I was like, yo, Ra, I want to give me a reading. I want to know about him, da-da-da-da. And I remember you told me, you was like, yo, he going to look just like you. And I forgot why you said he was going to look
Saturn in the first house.
That's what it was? And
Saturn is the planet of the father. The first house rules the face and head. So he's going to resemble the fuck out of you.
But is that, so what is it? Is that with all my children, or is that?
If they're all born with Saturn in the first house, I would say yeah, immediately. Okay. But the one that is born with the moon in the first house, for example, is going to look like their mother. No matter what.
Right.
Because the moon is our mother.
You sharp with your shit,
metaphysically as well as actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you I'll save that for the next show, because we could go another hour, Rob. We could go a whole another hour, man.
I sure can, and you know you don't want it.
I gotta get out. Oh man. You left your number again, right, Rob?
Yes, sir. 516-881-6992 between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
All right, family. With that being said, this is Brother Rich Akhu. Amazing show, Astro-Theology in the Bible, as well as other religions, not just the Bible. An amazing show, family. Thanks for tuning in, Rod. Thanks for coming on again, my brother. And I'm going to see everybody next time. Peace.
Peace, bro.
Yes, sir.